November 14th, 1957, 2:34 p.m., Manhattan Criminal Court, Courtroom 6. Bumpy Johnson sat in the witness stand, answering questions calmly, professionally. District Attorney Robert Hanson paced in front of him, frustrated. Nothing was working. Every question, Bumpy had an answer. Every trap, Bumpy sidestepped. "Isn't it true," Hanson's voice rose, "that you're nothing but a thug?" Bumpy's lawyer stood. "Objection, Your Honor. Inflammatory." Judge Morrison sustained it. "Rephrase, counselor." Hanson was losing. He could feel it. 6 months of preparation, and this witness was making him look foolish. So Robert Hanson did something no one in that courtroom expected. He walked up to the witness stand and slapped Bumpy Johnson across the face. The crack echoed through the courtroom. Judge Morrison gasped. 50 spectators went silent, and Bumpy Johnson just sat there, hand touching his reddening cheek, and said 5 words that ended a legal career. "Your Honor, I'd like to note that for the record. This is the story of the slap that destroyed a prosecutor and freed the most powerful man in Harlem." To understand what happened in that courtroom, you need to understand the trial. November 1957, Bumpy Johnson was on trial for racketeering. The district attorney's office had been building this case for 2 years. The lead prosecutor was Robert Hanson, 38 years old, ambitious, hungry for a conviction that would make his career. Hanson wasn't just any prosecutor. He was a rising star. Harvard Law, perfect record, 12 major convictions, 0 losses. He'd been profiled in newspapers as the man who could finally bring down organized crime in Harlem. The case seemed solid. Numbers racket, 20 witnesses, financial records, paper trail connecting Bumpy to illegal gambling operations. But there was a problem. Bumpy Johnson's lawyer was Abraham Rothstein, one of the best defense attorneys in New York, and Rothstein had been systematically destroying the prosecution's case. Witness 1 impeached on credibility. Witness 2 caught lying about dates. Witness 3 admitted being paid by the DA's office for testimony. By the time the prosecution rested, Hanson's perfect case had more holes than evidence. But Hanson had one last move, called Bumpy Johnson to the stand. Most defendants don't testify, too risky, but Rothstein and Bumpy had discussed it, and Bumpy had insisted. "Let them ask their questions, I'll answer." So on November 14th, Bumpy Johnson took the stand, sworn in, ready, and for 2 hours he calmly dismantled every question Hanson asked. "Mr. Johnson, do you run illegal gambling?" "No, sir." "Do you control the numbers racket in Harlem?" "No, sir." "Isn't it true you collect protection money?" "No, sir. I own legitimate businesses." Every answer was calm, direct, unhelpful. Hanson grew more frustrated. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The defendant was supposed to get rattled, make mistakes, reveal something incriminating. But Bumpy Johnson just sat there, composed, answering with the same 2-word responses. By 2:30 p.m., Hanson was desperate. "Mr. Johnson," Hanson's voice had an edge now, "you expect this jury to believe you're just a legitimate businessman?" "I don't expect anything, counselor. I'm just answering your questions truthfully." "Truthfully?" Hanson laughed. "You've been arrested 18 times. Arrested, not convicted. There's a difference." The jury shifted. Some nodded. Bumpy was right. Hanson's face reddened. "You associate with known criminals." "I live in Harlem. I know a lot of people. That's not illegal." "You've been seen at illegal establishments." "I've been to many establishments. I don't inspect their licenses before I walk in." Rothstein, Bumpy's lawyer, watched from the defense table. His client was winning. Every answer was perfect, calm, reasonable. Judge Morrison watched too. He'd presided over hundreds of trials. This was one of the best witness performances he'd ever seen. Hanson knew it. He was losing, and everyone in the courtroom could see it. "Mr. Johnson, isn't it true that you run a criminal enterprise in Harlem?" "No, sir." "Isn't it true you've ordered violence against people who oppose you?" "No, sir." "Isn't it true you're exactly what the prosecution has claimed, a dangerous criminal?" "No, sir. I'm a businessman who protects my community." "Protects?" Hanson's voice went sharp. "You mean extorts." "Objection," Rothstein stood. "Counsel is testifying." Sustained. "Mr. Hanson, ask questions. Don't make statements." Hanson's hands clenched into fists. His perfect case, his perfect record, his career-making conviction, all of it was slipping away because this defendant wouldn't break. "Mr. Johnson, you sit there so calm, so composed, answering questions like you're innocent, but we both know what you really are, don't we?" "I only know what I am, counselor, not what you think I am." "What you are," Hanson stepped closer to the witness stand, "is a thug." The courtroom went silent. Rothstein shot to his feet. "Objection! Inflammatory, prejudicial, and improper." Judge Morrison banged his gavel. "Sustained. Mr. Hanson, you will rephrase that question immediately and apologize to the witness." But Hanson wasn't listening. He was staring at Bumpy Johnson, who sat there calmly, not even bothered by the insult. And something in Hanson snapped. Robert Hanson walked toward the witness stand. Rothstein saw it first. "Your Honor!" Before anyone could react, Hanson reached the stand and slapped Bumpy Johnson across the face. The crack echoed like a gunshot. Judge Morrison gasped. His mouth fell open. The court stenographer's hands froze over her keys. The bailiff reached for his weapon, unsure what to do. 50 spectators in the gallery sat in stunned silence. And Bumpy Johnson just sat there. His cheek was red, the outline of Hanson's hand visible. But Bumpy didn't move, didn't stand, didn't raise his voice. He slowly lifted his hand, touched his cheek, then looked at Judge Morrison. "Your Honor," Bumpy's voice was perfectly calm. "I'd like to note that for the record." Those 8 words broke the silence. Judge Morrison found his voice. "Bailiff, you will remove District Attorney Hanson from this courtroom immediately." The bailiff rushed forward, grabbed Hanson by the arm. Hanson seemed to realize what he'd done. His face went pale. "Your Honor, I apologize. I don't know what—" "Out!" Morrison's voice boomed. "You will remove yourself from this courtroom right now, or I will hold you in contempt." 2 bailiffs escorted Hanson out. He looked back at Bumpy once. Bumpy just watched him go, still touching his cheek. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Morrison banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! I will have order!" The whispers died down. Morrison looked at Bumpy. "Mr. Johnson, are you all right?" "I'm fine, Your Honor, just surprised." "Do you wish to press charges for assault?" Rothstein stood immediately. "Your Honor, my client reserves that right but would like to continue with this proceeding first." Morrison nodded. "Very well." He turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have witnessed an unprecedented breach of courtroom decorum and professional conduct. You will disregard the prosecutor's outburst and actions. However, I want to be clear. The conduct of District Attorney Hanson in no way reflects the integrity of this court or the justice system." He paused. "That said, I am declaring a mistrial. The prosecution's misconduct has irrevocably prejudiced this case. Mr. Johnson, you are free to go." The courtroom exploded. Reporters rushed for the doors. Morrison banged his gavel. "Furthermore, I am referring Mr. Hanson to the State Bar for disciplinary proceedings. This behavior is intolerable." Rothstein stood. "Thank you, Your Honor. My client wishes to make a brief statement." Morrison nodded. Bumpy stood up from the witness stand, straightened his tie, looked at the jury, then at Judge Morrison. "Your Honor, I came here today to answer questions truthfully. I sat in this chair for 2 hours and responded to everything the prosecution asked. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show disrespect. I just answered questions."
He gestured to where Hanson had been standing. That man couldn't get the answers he wanted, so he resorted to violence. In this courtroom, in front of you, in front of the jury. That tells you more about this case than any testimony ever could. Bumpy picked up his hat from beside the witness stand. I respect this court, I respect the law, and I'm grateful that justice still means something here. He nodded to Judge Morrison and walked out. Within an hour, the story was on every radio station in New York. Prosecutor slaps defendant in court. Judge declares mistrial. By evening, it was national news. By the next morning, it was the lead story in every newspaper from Boston to Los Angeles. The New York Times, District Attorney's assault ends high-profile racketeering trial. The Daily News, slap heard around the courtroom, prosecutor's career in jeopardy. The Amsterdam News, Harlem's paper, Bumpy Johnson vindicated after courtroom violence. Robert Hanson became the most infamous prosecutor in New York overnight. November 15, 1957, Hanson was called before the State Bar Disciplinary Committee. The hearing was swift. 3 judges reviewed the case. Mr. Hanson, do you have anything to say in your defense? Hanson tried to explain. I was frustrated. The defendant was too calm, too composed. I felt he was mocking the court. So you assaulted him?
I lost my composure. In a courtroom, in front of a judge, in front of a jury, while acting as an officer of the court. Hanson had no response. Mr. Hanson, you have committed one of the most serious breaches of professional conduct this committee has ever witnessed. You physically assaulted a defendant on the witness stand. You brought violence into a courtroom. You violated every oath you took as an attorney. The head judge leaned forward. Your license to practice law in the state of New York is hereby revoked, effective immediately. Hanson's career ended in that moment. Harvard law degree, meaningless. 12 previous convictions, forgotten. Rising star reputation, destroyed. All because he couldn't keep his composure when a defendant stayed calm. But the story didn't end there. November 20th, 1957, the District Attorney's Office issued a statement. After reviewing the circumstances of the November 14th incident, and in light of Mr. Hanson's misconduct and the subsequent mistrial, this office has determined that we will not retry Ellsworth Johnson on racketeering charges. Bumpy was free, completely. The case that was supposed to end his career instead ended his prosecutors. December 1957, Bumpy held a community meeting in Harlem. Over 300 people attended. A lot of you followed that trial. You saw what happened, and I want you to remember something. The room went quiet. That prosecutor tried everything: questions, accusations, intimidation. When none of it worked, he used violence, because that's what people do when they're losing. They abandon reason for force. Bumpy paused. But I didn't hit him back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't give him what he wanted. I just noted it for the record, and the judge did the rest. That's real power. Not in your fists, in your control, in letting the system work when you work it right. The room erupted in applause. Robert Hanson never practiced law again. He moved to New Jersey in 1958, took a job as a paralegal, died in 1983, a broken man whose name was synonymous with one of the worst moments in New York legal history. Law schools used his case as an example of what not to do. The Hanson incident became required reading in legal ethics classes. Judge Morrison continued on the bench until 1972. He later said in an interview, "In 30 years of jurisprudence, I never saw a defendant handle himself with more composure than Ellsworth Johnson that day, and I never saw a prosecutor lose his composure more completely than Robert Hanson." Abraham Rothstein, Bumpy's lawyer, became one of the most sought-after defense attorneys in New York. That trial made his career. And Bumpy Johnson? The slap became legendary in Harlem.
Not because Bumpy got hit, but because of what he did after. He didn't retaliate, he didn't shout, he didn't lose control. He just noted it for the record and let the system destroy the man who'd lost control. For the rest of Bumpy's life, people would ask about that day. Is it true a prosecutor slapped you in court? And Bumpy would smile and say, he did, and I let him, because I knew the moment he raised his hand, he'd already lost. The story taught Harlem something important. Real power isn't about who can hit the hardest. It's about who can stay calm when everyone else is losing control. The man who keeps his composure in chaos is the man who wins. Robert Hanson learned that the hard way. In front of a judge, in front of a jury, in front of 50 witnesses. And for the rest of his life, he carried the weight of the moment he forgot the most important lesson of law. Justice isn't about emotion, it's about control. And on November 14, 1957, the only person with control in that courtroom was the man who'd just been slapped. If this story changed how you think about power, hit that like button. Subscribe for real Bumpy Johnson stories about intelligence over violence, control over chaos. Drop a comment. Could you have stayed calm if someone slapped you in court? Turn on notifications because next time we're covering the story of the mob boss who spit in Bumpy's face in front of his own men and what happened 72 hours later. Remember, anyone can lose their temper, but the most dangerous people in the room, they're the ones who never do. Bumpy Johnson proved it in a courtroom in 1957, and Robert Hanson spent the rest of his life wishing he'd remembered that lesson.